"Hey, darlings." The last greeting from the grave to Nathaniel seemed like a laugh of fate. The air was filled with silenced conversations and false tears, and the light rain danced over the elegant curtain covering the sad. Nathaniel, who was declared dead by all, was lying motionless, trying to realize his distorted reality. Only foggy memories of burning pain in his chest and sudden fall burst into his mind. When he tried to move, his close conversation completely caught his attention. It was Carla, his wife. Her voice was constantly breaking, saying, "with someone," to Tanael. He immediately recognized as Joao, his financial advisor, and it seems to be Carla's lover. "Everything is going according to plan," said Joao, with a false tone of consolation. "With funerals and wills for our benefit, everything will be ours." Carla, between false sobbing, she replied coldly, who pierced Nathaniel to the bones. "It must work. I can't stand it if it's all in vain." Shocked and poisoned, Nathaniel felt the horror of his body as never before. He was not only betrayed, but also planned to bury two people he trusted most. Despite the desire to shout, weakness did not allow him. He needed a miracle to get out of this premature grave, and so he heard light steps approaching the coffin. A young, curious voice cut through the whisper of the rain. "Uncle Gonzalo, have you heard that? It seems someone is knocking from inside the coffin." It was Anastasia, the daughter of the tomboy, accompanied by her dog Charlie, who never stopped barking and digging next to the coffin on Tanael. His animal instinct found life there, where it shouldn't have been. Gonzalo, an average-aged man with decades of experience of a work murderer, approached with distrust. Nevertheless, Charles's persistent likes convinced him to take up the investigation. "Anastasia, stay behind for safety," warned Gonzalo, starting to unscrew the lid of the coffin with trembling hands. Fresh air that broke into the space was in relief, and horror at the same time for Nathaniel, who used her first breath in the hours to barely whisper, "Please help me. Don't leave me here." Frightened but decisive, Anastasia looked at Uncle and then at Nathaniel. "Don't worry, we won't leave you." Her voice was the promise of a new ally in the gloomy world of betrayal. In the dark of a rainy night, the old Gonsalves van slowly moved along the empty streets of the city. Nathaniel was lying on his homemade stretcher, still stunned and confused, and Anastasia accompanied him, convinced that he was safe. "We'll go straight to the hospital," Gonsal whispered, looking at Nathaniel in the mirror of the rear view. "When we come, let me talk. We'll come up with something plausible." It was Anastasia, Charlie's nephew, accompanied by his dog, who never stopped barking and digging near the grave of Nathaniel. His animal instinct found life where it shouldn't have been. Gonzalo, an average man with decades of experience in the work of a grave worker, approached with distrust. Nevertheless, Charlie's persistent barks convinced him to take up the investigation. "Anastasia, stay behind for safety," he warned Gonzalo, starting to unscrew the coffin lid with trembling hands. The fresh air that broke into the space was a relief and a horror at the same time for Nathaniel, who used his first breath in hours to barely whisper, "Help me, please, don't leave me here." Anastasia, terrified but decisive, looked at the man and then at Nathaniel. "Don't worry, we won't leave you." Her voice was the promise of a new ally in the gloomy world of betrayal. In the darkness of a rainy night, the old van of Gonzalo slowly moved through the empty streets of the city. Nathaniel was lying on his homemade stretcher, still crazy and confused, and Anastasia accompanied him, convinced that he was safe. "When we arrive, let me talk. We will come up with something reasonable." Anastasia nodded, firmly holding her hand on the tonnage. Something that was beyond words. The local hospital, modest but effective, worked with minimal staff during the day, which was a blessing for a discreet solution to the situation. Gonzalo hurried to find the old friend's doctor on duty. He quickly explained that they had found the tonnage allegedly a victim of a robbery that was left to death. Although the story was not true, the doctor did not ask questions. The urgency of the situation and respect for Gonzalo prevailed. They immediately helped Nathaniel. While the doctors were working, Anastasia stayed with Nathaniel, watching him slowly come to his senses and gain strength. "How do you feel?" she asked gently when he opened his eyes and found himself in the room lit with a lamp. He was confused and thankful. He whispered, trying to get up, "Why are you helping me? There is no reason to risk for me." Anastasia smiled warmly. "Sometimes doing what is right is the only reason we need." After a while, the doctor came in to tell them that Nathaniel was physically stable, although he was still weakened by the poison he swallowed. He recommended several days of hospitalization to completely cleanse the body and restore it. "No one should know that you are here, especially since you are alive," Gonsalvo warned, saying goodbye that night. "Rest and recover. We will take care of everything else." Leaving the room with Gonsalvo and the doctor, Anastasia remained for another moment. "Why would Carla do such a thing?" asked Nathaniel. His voice was soaked with a painful pain that was not only physical. Anastasia took a chair and sat next to him, preparing for a long conversation. "I don't know, Nathaniel, but we will find out and make sure that she will no longer be able to harm you." Anastasia stayed until Nathaniel's veins closed, crushed with fatigue and drugs while he was sleeping. She developed the following steps. Realizing that the battle was just beginning, they had to find out the depth of Carla's betrayal and, what was most important, how to protect Nathaniel from future attacks. While Nathaniel was in hospital, rumors of his supposed death continued to spread, and the small community was mourning the loss of one of its most outstanding citizens. In the hospital, Nathaniel's room became a temporary sanctuary for peace and operational work. But the tension of his situation pulsated under superficial calm. Anastasia spent long hours with Nathaniel, dividing her time between preparing for psychological exams and caring for him. Over time, the relationship between the patient and the caregiver strengthened, based on trust and mutual respect. Nathaniel began to see Anastasia not only as a savior, but what about the unexpected girlfriend who offered him a new and sincere perspective? "Why are you still here? You could do anything else, live your life," asked Nathaniel, once looking at her with a mix of gratitude and concern. "I think sometimes our lives take unexpected turns, and this is one of those moments for me," she replied, smiling. "Besides, your help gave me a different perspective on what I want to do professionally. I believe that the collision with difficult situations teaches us more about ourselves than any book." Over time, Anastasia used her knowledge in the field of psychology to help Nathaniel cope with the stress and anxiety that naturally arose in his situation. She shared techniques of breathing gymnastics and meditation, by doing it through visualizing exercises that helped him remain focused and calm before the uncertainty that was hanging over his future. "These methods that you teach me really help me," said Nathaniel in one of their sessions. "I feel that now I can think more clearly and make better decisions." Anastasia was satisfied and nodded, seeing Nathaniel's progress. "It's important that you remain mentally and emotionally strong. What we encounter is not only a physical test, but also a mental one." At the same time, Gonzalo continued his discreet investigation on his own. He kept Anastasia informed of the movements of Carla and Joao. One day, when he visited Tanael in the hospital, Gonzalo brought disturbing news. "I heard rumors that Carla is trying to speed up the process of the investigation. It seems she wants to sell her assets as soon as possible." Nathaniel has been smudging his eyebrows, processing the information. "We need to act quickly. We can't let her achieve her goals." Anastasia intervened. "Perhaps it is worth considering the option to tell people that you are alive. This may be a way to stop her." "Not yet," Nathaniel said. "Doing this now can put us in a more vulnerable position. But be ready, because this moment will come." While Nathaniel was recovering in the hospital, Carla's heart was filled with anger. In the place she once shared with Nathaniel, she was moving with urgency and caution, reviewing her husband's financial documents and planning her next step, the final step. Carla was able to get a stronger poison through her dark connections. She was convinced that this time there would be no mistakes. She planned to visit Nathaniel in the hospital under the pretext of a farewell. It was just a facade to fulfill her deadly plan. On the day of the visit, Carla came to the hospital with an elegant bottle of wine, presumably as a sign of reconciliation and farewell. Her smile was the perfect mask of sadness and threat of conscience when she handed the bottle to the doctor, assuring that she would reach Nathaniel. "I want him to take it as the last gesture of love," she said with a trembling voice, making tears in her eyes. After Carla left, the doctor, not knowing the real intentions behind the gift, brought the bottle to Nathaniel's room. Anastasia, who was there at that moment, was watching with suspicion. "Nathaniel, is it true that you should take something from her?" she asked, anxious. Nathaniel looked at the bottle, warning his intuition. "Let's hide her for now." They decided to leave the bottle in the closet, planning to analyze it later. Anastasia, acting carefully and using her university contacts, found a friend of the chemist who could analyze without attracting the authorities, at least for now. While Carla was returning home, convinced that her plan was going according to plan. This time she could not make any mistakes. Her future depended on the effectiveness of her poisonous strategy. The next day, the results of the analysis came, confirming the suspicions of Nathaniel and Anastasia. The wine was infected with a potentially deadly poison. Knowing the depth of Carla's betrayal, Nathaniel felt relief and horror at the same time, avoiding another attempt at murder. This is a clear proof of her intentions, in regard to the report with seriousness. "Nathaniel, we need to go to the police." "Not yet." Nathaniel replied with a thoughtful answer. "Let's use this evidence at the right moment. For now, let's continue pretending to be dead. This is our benefit." The discovery strengthened his determination. With the help of Anastasia and Gonzalo, they began to plan how to use this evidence to expose Carl and protect Nathaniel. After a week of recovery and secrecy, he finally got out of the hospital. Gonzalo prepared a small safe house outside the city where Nathaniel could continue his recovery, not afraid that Carla or her accomplices would find him. Anastasia and Gonzalo accompanied him to his new shelter, making sure that everything was in order before leaving him. "Remember that only a few people know that you are here. Let's leave it until we figure it out." Gonzalo advised him to slap her on the shoulder before leaving. The following days, Nathaniel got used to her new environment, using time for thinking and planning. Anastasia often visited him, bringing news from outside and stress management and meditation lessons. One day, when she was preparing for one of these sessions, Anastasia came obviously shocked, giving him a phone with an open article. These were local news about the increase in police activity near the cemetery, where the funeral rite for Nathaniel was held. "Do you think this is connected to me? With the coffin?" Nathaniel asked. His skin was covered with goosebumps. "I don't know," Anastasia answered sincerely. "But if someone was fumbling there, they could be looking for evidence or something else." Until Anastasia and Gonzalo find out the truth about this police activity. Nevertheless, the growing concern on Tanael pushed him to an active resolution of the problem. That night, checking his email on one of the computers taken in, attention was drawn to an unknown message. It was from an anonymous sender, but the content was clear, warning that Carla is planning the last move to manage her condition and disappear. The message included specific details of bank accounts and meetings with lawyers. "Anastasia, this is serious. We must act now," said Nathaniel urgently. "If she is disposed of by everyone and disappears, we will never be able to catch her." Aesthetically, Anastasia agreed decisively. "We need help. It's time to get the police involved, but so that it protects us." Together, they planned how to use anonymous messages and found poison as evidence for a controlled confrontation with Carla. The strategy was risky, but necessary. They had to make sure that Carla would not be able to leave or cause even more harm. As the attention was concentrated, Nathaniel and Anastasia completed the preparation for the decisive confrontation with Carla. Detective Ramos, a serious and loyal man of justice, agreed to help them after thorough examination of the evidence. It was clear that Carla had crossed the line that had put her on the radar of serious criminal activity. The plan was simple, but risky. Nathaniel would reveal himself to Carla at a controlled meeting with the police, ready to intervene. The goal was to catch her in the trap by making her reveal her true intentions and take away her luck. To receive recognition, Nathaniel and Anastasia gathered in a safe house to go through each detail. Anastasia was not only emotional support, but also a key strategist in planning. Everything is ready, Nathaniel. When the time comes, just follow the script and remember that you are not alone in this, Anastasia assured, the last time checking her phone to confirm details with Detective Ramos. The meeting was supposed to take place in the same hotel where Nathaniel and Carla celebrated their birthday many years ago, a place full of memories and meaning. When he arrived, he was surprised to see Nathaniel sitting in a private room. It seemed like he was alone. Nathaniel, how is this possible? I saw you. I buried you. Carla was kicking, her confidence facade instantly collapsing. Yes, you buried me. But I, said Nathaniel calmly, his voice was firm, despite the whirl of emotions. For you. She tried to kill me for you. Carla was hesitant. Her mind worked merrily, looking for a way out. But before she could formulate an answer, Nathaniel continued to reveal the evidence of her attempts to kill and financial betrayal. The conversation quickly grew, and at the moment of despair and humiliation, Carla revealed more than she planned. She admitted her actions, justifying them with accusations against Nathaniel, claiming years of indifference and lack of love. At that moment, Detective Ramos and his team, who were watching from the next room, entered and arrested Carla. The surprise on her face was obvious. She was not only caught, but also recorded. I'm sorry, Carla, but we needed concrete evidence to arrest you, Nathaniel explained while the officers were reading her rights. And Carla was under surveillance. Nathaniel felt relieved, although the pain of betrayal was still present. Anastasia came up, offering silent support. You were very brave, Nathaniel. Now we can start closing this chapter, Anastasia said, while they both watched Carl be taken away after a successful arrest. After a successful arrest of Carl and the exposure of his true motives, the atmosphere in the small village began to change. The news that Nathaniel was alive and his wife was arrested caused a wave of shocked locals who believed in the tragic story of the wicked wife. In the center of all this, Nathaniel worked with Detective Ramos and prosecutors to guarantee that Carla would face all the legal consequences of her actions. The evidence was irrefutable, especially with the confession and toxicological reports of poison. Despite the clarity of the case, standing against Carla in court was emotionally exhausting for Nathaniel. During one of the sessions, Anastasia stayed with Nathaniel, providing constant support. It is important to remember why you do this, she reminded when they were looking at the documents. It is not only justice for you, but also a clear message against betrayal and greed. Nathaniel felt the truth in her words. The power of Anastasia gave him energy and perspective, helping him to stay focused on the result. In addition to immediate pain, the judicial investigation was tense. Now in prison uniform, the image of cold blood and calculation was still radiating. When the time came for her testimony, she tried to portray herself as a victim of circumstances, claiming that she was brought to the brink of alleged emotional and financial negligence on Tanael. However, the charges were well prepared. They presented not only evidence of conspiracy and attempted murder, but also testimony of employees and friends, which contradicted Carla's version, showing Nathaniel as a caring and generous husband. Finally, the jury returned the verdict, guilty of all accusations. Carla was sentenced to a long-term sentence, guaranteeing that she will not be able to cause any more harm. After the trial, when the hall was empty, Nathaniel felt depressed, mixed with relief and sadness. Anastasia, noticing his inner struggle, suggested walking in the nearest park. "You need to rest a little from all this," said Anastasia, gently leading him out of the building. Walking along the paths, covered with trees and full autumn flowers, Nathaniel was thinking about everything that had happened. Carla's betrayal left a deep wound, but the actions of people like Anastasia and Gonzalo kept him afloat. "Thank you, Anastasia. I don't know how I would have managed without you," he confessed to Nathaniel. His voice was full of sincere gratitude. Anastasia smiled at him. "Sometimes life puts us through trials, but it also brings us unexpected allies. I am here for you, Nathaniel, not only as your protector, but also as your friend." Autumn has passed the place of a soft winter, reflecting the new peace in Nathaniel's life with Carla. Standing before justice and the burden of betrayal and danger, finally removed from his shoulders. Now, Nathaniel could focus on restoring her life and give it a new meaning. In that cold but calm autumn, Nathaniel and Anastasia went to a local shelter for children, where they decided to devote their time and resources. This place, modest but filled with laughter and games, won the hearts of Nathaniel during his visits with Anastasia. "I always thought that the meaning of life was to accumulate wealth and achievements," thought Nathaniel, looking at the playing children. "But now I see that this is not the case. Help here makes me feel like part of something bigger, something really good." Anastasia listened and smiled. "These children can teach us a lot about resilience and joy, even in difficult situations. I think we are exactly where we should be." Days passed, and Nathaniel found more and more peace in his work with children. He also began to participate in public projects, using his experience in business to help small local enterprises. His life, once determined by the loneliness of negotiating rooms and millions of contracts, now found meaning in the smiles of children and the gratitude of the neighbors. One beautiful evening after a particularly busy day in the shelter, Nathaniel and Anastasia were sitting in a small cafe in the village. Nathaniel looked at Anastasia with eyes full of determination and unanswered question. "Anastasia, these months have changed my life in such a way that I never dreamed of. You were an integral part of this. I can't imagine continuing this journey without you. Will you marry me?" Anastasia, apparently excited and surprised, slowed down the answer. Words were lost in the sea of emotions, but finally, with a firm and happy voice, she said, "Yes, Nathaniel, I will gladly marry you." The engagement of Nathaniel and Anastasia symbolized not only the beginning of a new life together, but also the birth of new dreams and common projects. They decided to expand their work in the shelter and start a fund to support children and teenagers in difficult situations, using the state of Nathaniel to create the heritage of hope and positive changes. Having returned to the shelter under the winter sky, which had already begun to fill with stars, Nathaniel and Anastasia felt that they were surrounded by the calm beauty of the world, which continues to be indifferent to small victories and tragedies in human life. They realized that although the path to happiness can be full of challenges, every step is worth it when it is shared with those who sincerely understand and appreciate what is truly important in life.